Hello, my name is Nankya Senungi, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk about the intersection between our desires for our children and God's plans. My kids have my great looks and genes, but they are also created in the image of God. And with that image comes His plans and His purposes for their lives. I see my role as a mom to be more of a support in the passenger seat while the Lord is in the driver's seat. And I am meant to help prepare His children for His plans and His purposes. Doesn't mean that I don't have my own desires and expectations, but I think I have to be mindful that God has better plans and purposes. So I want to kind of dig into the Bible and talk through a couple of examples of where we see parents' expectations for their children's are different than God's plans. And I think you'll be really excited and encouraged to see this in the Bible today. So the first one I want to talk about is Samson. So we are introduced to Samson in the book of Judges. And so oftentimes when we think about Samson, we think about I think about Hercules for whatever reason. I'm not really sure, but like a big, strong guy. We might think about Delilah. We might be thinking about cutting his hair. But we actually are introduced to Samson. He was married twice, and we're going to talk about his first marriage and his parents' reaction. So in the book of Judges, in chapter 14, 1 through 4, Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, "I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife." His father and mother replied, "Isn't there an acceptable woman amongst your relatives or amongst all of our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife?" But Samson said to his father, "Get her for me, for she's the right one for me." And this is what I think is so cool. In verse 4, his parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines, who at that time were ruling over Israel. So I think as parents, we all have desires for whom our children might marry. Like I have two boys. I desire for them to marry women that love Jesus, that love God, that are Christians, just like Samson's parents, right? Not only do they have expectation for him to marry somebody that was from Israel, but also that was a cultural expectation, and it was a law. It was against the law to actually marry a Philistine. So imagine the disgrace that they were feeling that their son wanted to marry a Philistine woman. But it says here so clearly that this was God's plan. And it's so awesome. I won't, reveal the rest, but you can read how God does use Samson to overcome the Philistines, to defeat the Philistines, right? And it is through this marriage that he's able to do that. So I was just so encouraged by that. I still hope that my sons marry Christian women, but I think here we see that, our desires and expectations can be different, and God has better plans, not just for this marriage, but for the people of Israel through this marriage. Another example I want to share is the Apostle Paul. So in the book of Acts, Paul tells us that he comes from a lineage of Pharisees, right? It's probably like the family business. It's probably his dad, his granddad, his great-granddad, all Pharisees. And he, as a Pharisee, was also persecuting Christians. When he converted to Christianity, it doesn't say this in the Bible, but scholars assume or think or believe that his family disowned him when he decided to become a Christian. And oh my goodness, if they only knew the impact that God was going to use Paul to build his church, right? To write a third of the New Testament, right? If they only knew what God was planning for Paul. And so there is a great example again of like how we sometimes don't always have the understanding or the vision of our children. It doesn't mean that we don't desire great things for our kids. We do, but sometimes when that hinders our ability to see our children falling into his plans, we can kind of miss the entire point of why he created them. I have two small boys, 5 and 1, and I haven't had the opportunity a ton yet to be at this intersection of, my desires, cultural standards, and God's will. But I'm anticipating as my children grow up that there will be plenty of opportunities to exercise this muscle of challenging or renewing my mind on my desires and expectations versus what God has for them. So as I'm anticipating this season or kind of going through that, I'm thinking about like 3 things. There are kind of 3 things that are coming to mind that I'm thinking about that I want to share with you. So one of the things I'm thinking about is like margin, especially when it comes to time. I don't want to overschedule my children, but I want to be able to have margin to be able to respond to what God is doing. I also want to be able to use that time to be able to observe and understand their leaning, their bending, their kind of their own natural, organic, whatever it is God has put into them, to better understand what God has planned for them. So I think right now I'm really in that season of observing, understanding, learning, and listening to God on what he has. Another thing that I'm thinking about is like making sure my children understand that they know that God has a plan for them, a mighty plan, a very unique purpose for them that only they can do. God planned for them in this specific time throughout eternity, and that they understand that you might have your friends doing all of these things, but God does have an amazing plan that is special for you, and allowing them an opportunity to seek the Holy Spirit, to also pursue God and understanding what that is. And also, I'm praying for revelation, right? I want God to be able to reveal. Like we talked about Samson's parents, like they had no idea that God was going to use Samson in this way. And I don't believe that God reveals everything to us. I don't think that's how he operates. But I am praying for understanding and wisdom and revelation, so that way I can be that better support for my children and preparing them for his plans. I want to marvel at what God is already doing in my children and what he's already called them to do. He has determined this a long time ago, and we have the great opportunity to witness that come to fruition as our children advance his kingdom. I don't want us to parent in fear. I think, we can be like, oh my gosh, if I don't get it right, my children are doomed or they're not going to do, we don't have to worry about that. We have God's amazing grace. And we don't parent in fear, but really we can parent in the confidence that God will direct us and he will show us and share with us. And it doesn't actually depend on us, which is so amazing and freeing. It doesn't depend on us getting it right or us knowing what to do every day or how to direct our child, but he already knows how to do that. Let's just depend on him. Let's just surrender our children to his plans and to what he has for them and live in the freedom that he is in control. God is holding the future of our children, and that just gives me so much freedom that I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about what they're going to be doing when they get older, what sport they're going to be playing, what instrument they're going to be playing, whatever. I don't have to worry about those things. I just have to be called and submit to God, and he will take the rest. So Jesus take the wheel. I'm in the passenger seat, and he is in the wheel, taking the wheel, and his children are in the back of the car. So I just want to make sure that as we go forward today, as we continue to listen, that we are comforted by his word and by his plans for us, but also for our children. I've really enjoyed sharing this message with you all today, and I hope it's an opportunity to bless you and to think about the wonderful things that God has for you and your kids.